Hey everyone, welcome to a new video. I hope you had a great day. Let's take a look at some new I Do Work Here Lady stories, shall we? The first story is called He Is Not the Owner. I have an IT services business now serving corporate clients. But several years ago I also had a small chain of computer repair stores and took consumer walk-ins. I was a pretty active owner and would work the front counter regularly because I like to interact with customers. And when I can, I like to try to stay close to what the frontline is struggling with, since they understand the business way better than me in some key regards. I also think pretty highly of myself, so I used to plaster my face on all of my advertising, which resulted in my ending up as a sort of walking billboard for my business around town. So I'm working the counter at one of my shops, and this fellow I'd never seen before walks in and brings his computer to the counter. He tells me that his computer is not working and that I need to fix it. He was a second language learner, and so you can't always assume someone is trying to be rude if English is not their first language. Sometimes it just sounds that way, so patience is important, and so is not judging someone. I thank him for coming in and explain to him the diagnostic fees we charged and that the diag fee went toward the repair. All the standard stuff, and he immediately flies into a rage. He tells me that he had already paid the fee and the computer still wasn't fixed. Oh no, I said. When did you bring it in? He said he couldn't remember, but that it wasn't that long ago. So I looked it up in the computer system, and sure enough there is his customer record, complete with the serial number of his system. It had been a full year since he had that computer in. When I explained this to him, and that it had been too long by anyone's standard, he flies into another tirade about what a rip-off we are and how I need to fix this computer, because it never worked right after he got it back. I explained it had just been too long, and it set him off screaming and threatening me. Fortunately, there was a counter between us. So I tell him to get out of my store. I use profanity. It was not my finest hour. But profanity is a strong suit of mine. He won't leave and says he isn't leaving until I fix his computer for free, and says he'll call the police if he has to. I pick up the phone and dial police for him, explaining to the dispatcher I have someone in my shop who threatened me and refuses to leave. So the police show up, and by this time the guy has calmed down a bit and even seems thankful the police had arrived. After a short interview as to my job role and the situation, the responding officer says, "Sorry, the owner wants you to leave, so you're going to have to leave." This sets the guy off even more, and he starts screaming. "He's not the owner. I know the owner. The owner would never treat me this way. He's not the owner." So the policeman says, "This is the owner. I happen to know he's the owner." The guy continues to argue with the officer, but the officer remains calm. "Okay, how about we talk about this outside?" To my surprise, the guy grabs his computer and goes outside with the officer, still ranting on and on about how I had no authority and the officer had no right to throw him out, and he wants to speak to the owner. I could still see and hear the two of them outside the retail glass doors, as the police officer calmly points to the 9-foot tall retail windows on the front of the store, with my photo taking up 2/3 of the space, and my name and title in about 9-inch bold letters, under my giant ugly face. So the man goes silent, packs his computer in his car, hops in and drives away. I never saw him again. I was really thankful one of my clerks didn't have to deal with that guy, but when I messaged them all the story, they all wished they had been there. The next story is called This Guy Got What He Deserved. This story took place in the mid-1990s. Back in my 20s, I worked at a local hardware store that was just down the street from the city university, where I ended up being promoted to store manager. This was my college job. I had a small staff that included several other students, in particular a young lady cashier, Maria. Aside from being an employee, she was also the girlfriend of a friend/classmate of mine that happened to be the manager of the barbecue restaurant in the same strip mall as us. So I kinda looked out for her. She was the sort of young lady who drew attention from her looks and figure. Because of this, she tended to receive unwanted advances from random customers. This was typically dealt with by a passing comment of, "This is not a dating service from me," to the cashier. We had already worked this out. I wasn't getting after her, I was giving her an escape route. In this shop, the cashier station was basically a booth with 2 cash registers just at the front door of the store. The break room is in the back room, and you have to walk through the paint department to get to the break room. At her break time, Maria was walking back to the break room to relax and break out her books for class. I was making my rounds through the store, checking inventories etc. when I heard a polite "excuse me?" After that some muffled words I couldn't hear and a more irritated "excuse me?" Not the kind of "please let me pass," but more like "what the actual F did you just say to me?" This was followed by, in quick succession, a scream, loud noise like someone got the wind knocked out of them, a scuffle, thud and loud crack. Then a lot of unintelligible screaming. I and our floor salesman ran back to the area where the paint shaker was to find a guy we will call Grabby laying on the floor. He was one of the maintenance staff from the university. He was gripping his arm and yelling that Maria had assaulted him, to call the paramedics and the cops. Meanwhile, Maria was in shock, just repeating, "Oh my god, I hurt him. Please don't fire me." I asked my salesman to call 911 and tend to the guy on the floor. I took Maria back to the office and had her lay out the story for me, knowing that I couldn't capture audio. But I did have a very good video of the paint department, as it was a high theft and shoplifting area. The store, being in a strip mall with a popular barbecue joint right next door, happened to have police officers having lunch. So the police response officers were in the store before the salesman could even hang up the phone. Officer 1 was sent back to the office to interview me and Maria. He pulled Maria aside and asked for her side of the story. Grabby, apparently, as she was trying to get by him in the aisle, blocked her way. And he muttered to her in a threatening way that he was going to get intimate with her after work, which apparently prompted the louder, annoyed "excuse me." He then proceeded to rather forcefully grab her. She grabbed his wrist, spun and did one of those over-the-shoulder flips and put him on the ground, where she heard something break. As soon as the guy got his breath back, he started screaming in pain. She turned so that her back was to me and pulled her top and bra slightly aside to reveal where his grip on her had been. He had bruised her, leaving clear finger and thumb prints, according to what she told me later. Officer 1 had her sit down and then proceeded to take my side of the story. I explained the story as I knew it, what I heard and saw, and showed him the videotape evidence. And sure enough, you could clearly see the guy lean in, her face sort of crinkles in an annoyed expression, the grab and the flip. She was clearly in self-defense. At this point, the paramedics were working on the guy. He had a huge lump on his head where it hit the floor, and his arm, the one he grabbed her with, was broken. Apparently, he came down on the tiled concrete floor pretty badly. Officer 2 came in to report to Officer 1, who I guess was the higher ranking. He says Grabby said that she grabbed him out of the blue and just flipped him and broke his arm because he wouldn't get out of the way fast enough. Long story short, he ended up escorted to the hospital by police to get his arm set and then arrested for assault, battery and giving a false police report. Maria was saying she didn't want to press charges, she already hurt him. However, with this type of assault, the charges are automatic here. The fallout for Grabby? He was charged and convicted on all counts through a plea deal. He never went to court as the evidence was pretty overwhelming. He was banned for life from that store and fired from his job at the university. He was also placed on an offender registry and ended up divorced as his wife was none too happy about what he did. Last we knew, he was a guest of the state for at least 5 years. So at least we never had to testify. I might have left out one critical detail here, somewhat intentionally. Maria was a physical education major and was a black belt. The last story is called "Actually, I'm Your New Boss." In 2016, I was the new girl once again, removed every few years of my childhood. I was in a new marriage, in a new state, and had just landed a new job as a pool manager for the local YMCA. I knew nobody. I had just renewed my certifications and was to sit in on the lifeguard training classes leading up to summer hiring. I needed the hours for my lifeguard instructor certification renewal. Day 1 of class rolled around and the room quickly filled with 16, 17 and 18-year-old high school students. They were all chatting away happily, comparing notes about prom dresses and upcoming graduation parties, who just gotten their driver's licenses and more. I sat at the end of a U-shaped table, waiting for the lead instructor to arrive. A cute, bubbly teenage girl sat right down next to me and asked me questions about myself. She figured out I'd just moved to town and was elated. She'd met a new friend that she could show around as far as she was concerned. I listened intently as she told me which mall was trash and which movie theaters had the best prices. And then she asked me which school I went to. It was at that moment that I finally realized she thought I was her age. I was 26 at the time. I'm a redhead with pale skin and freckles and only look almost my age if I'm wearing makeup, which I never did to the pool. So I answered her, I actually just enrolled at college and I'm taking a full course load on top of this job. She excitedly told me she was also taking college courses on top of her high school classes and was set to graduate high school early. She was a junior and 17. I thought about telling her the truth, but the lead instructor walked in right at that moment. I let him quiet the class and introduce himself, and right on cue he asked me to come to the front of the room to introduce myself as well. Hey everyone, I'll be managing the pool this summer. I'll also be helping to certify you as lifeguards. Then we had each team introduce themselves and played an icebreaker game. I looked at my employee roster and realized the bubbly girl would be working at my pool. The sweet girl recovered so quickly. I sat back down next to her and she leaned over and whispered, "Oh my god, I hope I look half as good as you do when I'm old." I laughed and thanked her and then informed her she'd be working for me that season. She looked momentarily embarrassed but told me she couldn't wait. She ended up being one of my best guards that season and I still keep up with her and give her references for new jobs almost 7 years later. She just graduated from nursing school and is about to have a baby. I'm so proud of her and it's a fond memory for sure. Thanks for watching the video, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like, comment and subscribe to the channel, it really helps in the algorithm. I hope you have a great day, stay safe, bye bye.